UK, these boats became a little bit obsolete. There was just much faster ways of moving stuff around after that. The really big punting boats got a roof and a motor, and they became the narrow boats, which are still found on the canals all around the UK. You can hire some of them out like a floating caravan holiday. People live on them. I've seen them and been on a couple myself. They're actually quite nice, some of them. The smaller boats like ours were taken out for hunting and fishing trips because we move so slowly and quietly. We do not scare anything away. And the only changes they did to these boats was to add seating. Punting boats became really popular in the 1800s and early 1900s for picnics, day tripping, and just cruising around on rivers like we're doing at the moment. These boats became more leisure craft and cargo haulers after that point, and they've stayed that way ever since. So you might find punting boats on period pieces, you know, like Downton Abbey or something like that. They might be on those sort of things. Modern boats are mostly used for tourism, and they're still found in the UK and in other parts of Europe. But as far as the southern hemisphere goes, Christchurch is one of the few places you can find them. And it's due to Christchurch being a British settlement. Hey, there goes. Now, before Christchurch was settled, it was mostly a big swamp. And even local Maori in this area didn't have a settlement in the Christchurch area because it was really difficult to build on. But they used this area for their hunting and fishing. The Maori name for the river is Otakaro, and it roughly translates as the place where games happen. So the Maori used to travel up the river with a big bunch of canoes and a whole big family group. They would tie the boats up somewhere and they'd ask all the kids to look after the boats while the adults went off and hunted and fished. Kids, just being kids, didn't do as they were told. They got bored, they started playing around the river, splashing around, throwing each other around in the river, and they probably had a great time and forgot about the boats altogether. Like, I've got two boys myself, they are 10 and 12, and I know for a fact they wouldn't last 30 seconds. They'll be in the water as soon as I turn my back. But the parents knew they were going to do it. And they also knew the river was slow moving and shallow, which did make the river safe for them. It's like, almost like a big paddling pool. So the kids could splash around in the river as much as they liked, and the adults got on with their job of hunting and fishing without having to worry about them. So the Maori called the river Otakaro, the place where games happen, for that reason. It's quite nice, eh? Most Maori names do have a pretty good meaning behind them. The European settlers diverted a lot of the water away from the Christchurch area for farming when they arrived. The swamp kind of dried up, we were left with the rivers, and the city was built around the rivers after that. They used a lot of the boats that were really successful for moving stuff around on rivers from the UK to get stuff around the Christchurch area when they first started establishing it. So that's why Christchurch has punting boats. We've been doing tours on our boats in Christchurch since 1986. We've been doing this one in the gardens since 1994, which is why it's written on the sheds. And like I said, I've been punting for 4 years and I just love it. Punting is great exercise. You're out in the fresh air surrounded by nature. You meet lots of interesting people from all around the world. Sometimes we're actually filmed for the telly and things like that, so we might meet TV and radio stars. We meet lots of sports stars, and on the odd occasion we do have film stars on our boats as well. It can be quite fun some days. And you just can't have a bad day on one of these boats. It is a really relaxing thing to do. People often fall asleep in our boats, and it does happen quite a lot. People just lie back in the boat. You can hear them snoring until they swallow a bug or something usually. Yeah, punters never get up in the morning and think, oh geez, I've got to go to work, oh my gosh. It's not that sort of job, it's really fun. Sorry, I just swallowed a bug myself. Sorry about that. Flew right into my mouth. Sorry about that. Are you there?
We're doing that tomorrow.
Cool, we'll see you then. Yes, I love this job. This is my full-time job. I do this 5 days a week. I'm one of the few full-time professional punters in the southern hemisphere. There you go.
Wow.
Yeah. Most of them are found in the UK. Yeah. Yeah.
Where's the word from UK?
Sorry?
Yeah, originated from UK.
Yeah, the word punt, which is what the boat is called, comes from the Latin word for a bridge, which was pont. So barges pushed with poles were often used to get across rivers in medieval times where they couldn't build a bridge or where they hadn't built a bridge. So they used to ferry stuff across the river from one side to another. When they built the bridges, they took the same rafts up and down the rivers for hauling cargo, so they just kind of kept the same name. It's the same route word as pontoon, you know, for a floating platform. Yeah. So the root word comes from the Latin for a bridge, which was pont. So the boat's called a punt. I'm obviously operating it, so I'm a punter. You're being punted, it's not clever after that. Yeah, but it's the same root word as the pontoon, you know, the floating platforms. Yeah.
Quite like that one.
It's a lovely tree, eh?
Yeah.
Now that arch is kind of done by us, but it's also a natural arch as well. We just kind of trim it a little bit.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah.
It's just good.
We do like going underneath that, but it's quite nice though. This tree is very, very popular for wedding proposals as well.
The tree.
Yeah. If we ever have a wedding proposal on our boats, it tends to be underneath this tree. So it's a very, very popular one for that one. I've had 3 wedding proposals on my boats. It's actually quite nice. A lot of the time we know that they're going to do it, so we just have to pretend that we don't know. There you go.
It's quite nice.
Good time to park. Not bad, eh? While the weather holds, yeah, it should be nice.
I like the sound of the pedal.
It's like a sort of Highland Games thing going on. It's like you hear bagpipes and drums. What's going on? We have lots of free events going on in the park recently. Just about every single weekend has like a free event. So I can hear like drumming, like, or bagpipes.
There's a cricket today.
There's a cricket today?
Yeah.
Oh, it might be that then. Oh yes, it's Sri Lanka today, isn't it?
Yeah, Sri Lanka and New Zealand.
Yeah, so it might be coming from the Hagley Oval. Well, we've got these little black ducks. There's a couple of, well, there's a little baby one just on the left-hand side here. These are scorp duck. They're New Zealand's smallest native duck, and they're actually one of the smallest ducks in the world. That was a mother and baby. Now they are the only ones that can swim underwater.
Underwater?
Yeah. Ducks are designed to float on the surface, so they're actually pretty buoyant.
Yeah.
To get underwater for a duck is actually like trying to dive underwater wearing a life jacket. They float too well.
Because of their...
So ducks normally can't get underwater. Those little black ducks learn to dive at about 2 weeks old. And by the time they're adults, they're very, very good at it. The adults are known to dive down to about 7 or 8 meters, which is pretty impressive for their size. But they can also hold their breath for nearly 3 minutes at a time. Now, if you think humans panic underwater after about 20 or 30 seconds, so they are very, very, very good at it. And there's our paradise ducks again, these lovely couples. Yeah, they often do fight with other couples, so you only ever find them as up here. But they are notoriously good parents, those ducks. They live with their chicks right up until they find couples of their own. So if you ever see a group of them, they tend to be a group of teenagers with mum and dad or something like that. It's very unlikely you'll see a group of ducks like that when they're not beating the hell out of each other. Yeah. Black bills.
So the river is like stone in there, not mud.
Yeah, it's hardly moving our river. It's very, very slow. You'll see that we're actually passing all these bits that are floating down. So it's very, very slow moving river. It's hardly moving at all. That's why they have to take the plants out once in a while, because if it stores the river, the whole thing just stops. It's kind of like your lawn in the summertime. You have to mow it more often. It's the same deal with the plants. The statue. The statue is of James Edward Fitzgerald. He was the first governor of the Canterbury region. So he was like the first official mayor of Christchurch, effectively. So he would have been a very important person. They thought Christchurch was going to be the capital of New Zealand. So he would have been like almost like the first prime minister, but it just didn't happen. They decided to go for Wellington because it was centralised. It was more right in the middle of both of the islands, rather than having one further down. Yeah, so Christchurch was the biggest city in New Zealand. We're now the second biggest because Auckland is the biggest now. It's saying that there's like 1.5 million people living in Auckland and there's only 500,000 people here in Christchurch. 1/4 of the population lives in Auckland. It's crazy, eh? We're a small country, but only by population. We're actually the same size as the UK or Japan, as far as landmass goes.
The landmass. Yeah.
But yeah, but they have millions of people, whereas we have 5 million people. Lots of open area.
Oh, here, darling.
Nearly back. Yeah, our sheds are all kind of wonky. Our end of the boat sheds is sinking a little bit faster, so it's kind of twisted the whole building.
Yeah, it's going that way.
Well, it's because it's 2 stories, it's a little bit heavier, so it's sinking a little bit faster. Even the doors don't match up. You can see all the doors are all over the place.
Yeah.
It's a very, very wonky old building.
We're here now, we're back.
Okay, well, we're coming up to the end.